I remember going into Walmart one day because I needed some hair products or whatever. And in order for me to find the hair products that I need, I have to go to the quote unquote ethnic section of the store. So when I was looking for these hair products, I came across something and I was kind of shocked. I came across what is called bleaching cream. Now, I was shocked because I have never seen bleaching cream in the store, or maybe because I never noticed. It might have been in the store all along, but I probably never noticed it. But it got me thinking because the bleaching cream was in the ethnic section of the store. So it's geared towards black people, it's geared towards people of color. And I was thinking to myself, why would someone want to bleach their skin? Why would someone want to appear lighter? Is being light-skinned a good thing? Is being dark-skinned considered bad? Now, I myself, I'm not really dark. I consider myself like a medium tone, black-skinned person, but I'm not light-skinned either. But I would never think in a million years that in order for me to get ahead in life, that I needed to lighten my skin, or in order to get respect, that I would need to lighten my skin, or even to think that being beautiful, I had to be light-skinned. That is not, I've never thought that. And so that is why I was kind of shocked to see this bleaching cream, because if I had those thoughts, if I thought being light-skinned was beautiful, if I thought being light-skinned was going to get me where I wanted to go in life, I could buy it right then in that store that day. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Bird's Eye View, where we connect the past to the present in order to understand what makes the Black community unique. I am your host, Trin the Bird of ByrdOwlconsulting, and today we are talking about colorism. Where did the idea of colorism come from? And what impact has colorism had in the Black community in the past and in the present? What is the difference between colorism and racism? Now, before we can continue having this conversation about colorism, we have to look at the history of colorism. Colorism has its roots in slavery because slave owners typically gave quote-unquote better treatment to the enslaved who had fairer skin complexions. So while the darker skin toned enslaved people worked in the fields, their light skinned counterparts would work in the big house and had more of the domesticated chores and the lighter chores. So such as things like being a butler, the maid, the wet nurses, jobs like that. Slave owners were also partial to the light-skinned enslaved people because oftentimes they were actually their family members. Slave owners would frequently sleep with or have sexual intercourse with the enslaved women and sometimes even rape them. And so therefore you would have these light-skinned children who were still enslaved. And so that just gives you some of the evidence of these sexual assaults. And while slave owners didn't officially recognize their mixed-race children, they gave them privileges that the dark-skinned enslaved did not have. So therefore, now you have this light-skinned mindset that was viewed as an asset in the enslaved community. And by having this mindset that light skin was better, you are now dividing the enslaved amongst each other and putting them against each other. So before we go any further, we're going to hear a quick word from our sponsor, and when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation about colorism. Alright, now we're back. So now the idea that white skin is superior to dark skin may also derive from ruling classes typically having lighter complexions than peasant classes. In colorism today, colorism just didn't disappear after slavery had ended in the US. In Black America, those with light skin received employment opportunities that were off limits to darker skinned blacks. And this is why you might see in many times the upper class families in black society were largely light skinned people. And then soon light skin and privilege were actually linked in the black community. So if you were light skinned, then it was assumed that you had money. There was this thing called the paper bag test. I don't know if you ever heard of the paper bag test. So upper blacks or bougie blacks, they routinely would administer this paper bag test to determine if their fellow black Americans were light enough to be included in their social circles. The paper bag would be held against your skin, and if you were darker than the paper bag, then you were not admitted into whatever social circle that you were trying to get into. So colorism didn't just involve blacks discriminating against other blacks. Job advertisements that were found from the mid-20th century also revealed that African Americans with light skin clearly believed their coloring would make them better job candidates. So because of this whole notion of colorism, even black people started to believe that, hey, if I'm light skinned, then I would get a better job. There was a writer named Brent Staples who discovered some of these advertisements while he was searching the newspaper archives where he grew up in Pennsylvania. So these advertisements were found going back to the 1940s, and he had noticed that black job seekers, how they often identify themselves when they were applying for jobs. This is kind of one of the examples. So if you were looking for a job to be such as a cook, a chauffeur, a waitress, then sometimes within your qualifications, you were listed as light colored. Now, I find this interesting because first you would be listed as light colored, then you would be listed as your experience and your references in like your education, to reassure white employers that you were more pleasant, because if you were dark skinned, for some reason darker skin was being associated with being unpleasant, or believed that their customers would be unpleasant. So if you were light skinned, then you were considered more pleasant, you were considered a better worker. So I thought that was very interesting when I was kind of researching this with light skin. For example, light skinned Latinos make an average of $5,000 more than their dark skinned Latino counterparts. And then there was also a study done in the prison system. This was a study by Villanova University. They did a study of more than 12,000 African American women who are imprisoned in North Carolina, and found that lighter skinned black women received shorter sentences than their dark skinned counterparts. And then there was some other research done by a psychologist, a Stanford psychologist by the name of Jennifer Ebert-Hart, who found that dark-skinned black defendants were twice as likely as their light-skinned black defendant counterparts to get the death penalty for crimes involving white victims. So in the prison system, economically, colorism has played a part, whether we do it intentionally or it's kind of on like a subconscious level, because it's this sense of that white is better. The lighter you are, the better that you have to better yourself in this society, in this world. In relationships, romantic relationships, fair skin sometimes is associated with beauty and status. And there was research done that said that light-skinned black women are more likely to be married than their darker-skinned black women counterparts. You'll see how colorism affects television. You have characteristics of the dark-skinned person versus the light-skinned person. For example, you have the light-skinned black girl with the dark-skinned sidekick. That's always the case. The dark-skinned black girl, she's most of the time loud, ghetto, usually the butt of the joke. She's also seen as aggressive. So, for example, if you like the show Martin, you have Gina, who is the light-skinned best friend, and then you have her dark-skinned best friend Pam, who's always loud and playing into that stereotype of the dark-skinned black girl. You also kind of have that on the Proud Family. I know with Disney Plus, Proud Family is back on Disney, and I was actually just watching Proud Family the other day, and you have Penny Proud and her best friend Dejanay, who is her dark-skinned sidekick, and Dejanay is portrayed as loud, as ghetto. So again, you kind of have these stereotypes within colorism that are being played out in television. For the light-skinned person, they are seen as beautiful. They're seen as desirable, the popular one in the group. So if you notice some of the black TV shows that you might see, kind of pay attention to that to see what you think. There was also, I saw this YouTube clip about looking at how we are not really paying attention in terms of how we kind of replace some of these characters. So for example, if you look at My Wife and Kids, if you look at the first season, I think it's the first season of My Wife and Kids, you have this, one of the oldest daughter is played by a darker skinned black girl. Well, in the middle of either in the middle of the season or after the first season, they actually replaced the girl with another girl who's actually lighter skinned. And so the person who was talking on this YouTube video was like, well, how come you had to replace her with a lighter skinned girl and not kept that, just get another dark skinned girl? And so it was kind of questions like that, was thinking that maybe, you know, the audience would be more desirable of that light skinned girl. You have the other example, like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, we both know the two Aunt Vivs, and you have the darker skinned Aunt Viv, and then you have the lighter skinned Aunt Viv, and how kind of like you see how the character dynamics of both of those change once the lighter skinned Aunt Viv kind of takes the place of the darker skinned Aunt Viv. So it's just little nuances like that where there was an argument saying that there's colorism involved. And again, you have just other shows, just other TV shows. If you think about it, think about how the light-skinned person is portrayed, other than the dark-skinned black girl. And I think it's interesting too when I think of colorism, it's really more so pointed towards the women. When I think of colorism, I don't really think about black men. I'm not talking about how black men are, but it's like in all these TV shows, there's always the girl best friend, never the guy. It's always the girl. So it's like the girl in each of these shows that I mentioned, it fits that stereotype of colorism that feature colorism or quote unquote passing. And these movies were mostly in 1940s, 1950s. One movie that comes to mind that is kind of my favorite movie is Imitation of Life. And so basically, if you haven't seen Imitation of Life, I encourage you to watch it. It's a really good movie, but basically it's about this black woman who has a child with a white man, but the child is so fair-skinned and her hair has the texture of white people's hair. And so she passes for a white person. So basically, as this child gets older, she kind of sees the world, and she starts to see how being white during this time period was safer, and it was easier. It was easier quality of life, a better quality of life in her eyes. And so she goes back and forth of her identity. And there's a point in time in the movie where she doesn't talk to her mom for years. Years go by, and then eventually her mom gets sick, and so it's just this battle within herself. Okay, can I still love my mom even though she's black? Can I still be associated with her because she's black? Because I want to be seen as white, because that's what's going to get me the kind of life that I want. So it's a very good movie, and so this is just one of those movies that kind of touches on colorism, about passing for being white. So it's a really good movie, and so it just kind of looks at the impact that colorism has on the black community in itself. My question is, Which one is worse? Is one worse than the other? Is colorism worse than racism? With colorism, now you have some prejudice against your own people. Because you have black people who really do believe that being lighter is better than being darker, or that they are better than the dark-skinned people. But again, let's look at the history. Whose fault was that of even putting black people against each other like that? It was white people. Why did they do that? It's because if you divide people, then they're not going to come together for a greater cause. With racism, now you are being prejudiced and being racist against all black people. Doesn't matter how light you are, how dark you are. But if you say that all black people are bad, monkeys, dirty, dogs, whatever, then that's what racism is. But with colorism is looking at one ethnic group, one race, and saying that being lighter than darker equals better. And I think with colorism, it is one of those things that it can be worse sometimes, because I hate to see black people being prejudiced or discriminating against their own people because their skin tone is a little bit lighter or darker. So let's look at my family makeup. Like I said before, I am kind of medium tone. Of course, I get darker in the summertime, but my mom is light skinned. My dad is dark skinned. I'm the oldest out of 3, so it's me, my brother, and my sister. And it's kind of funny because each time my mom had a kid, each baby got lighter. So there's like this picture of me, my brother, and my sister, and my mom calls us her rainbow of blackness, because we literally look like a rainbow of blackness, because we go from a dark shade all the way to light. So my brother's kind of in the middle, that middle tone. My sister is the lightest of all 3 of us. So if you look at me and my sister, you would kind of not think that we were sisters, but we do like resemble each other more now that we've gotten older. I've had some people say that, oh, you and your sister look just alike, now that we've gotten older. But clearly she is much lighter than I am. So that's kind of like my family makeup. Now, we do have an ancestor who was very, very fair skinned, and he could pass as white. And I think the story goes is that he actually did not want to be considered black. So he said he was white. So even in my own family, we have that quote unquote passing. And so my question is now, even in today's society, it's not a question of if colorism still exists, is what can we do about it? How can we kind of overcome and start having this conversation? And even when this episode posts, I really want you guys to join in this conversation with me. You know, post in the comments, send me a message, send me an email. Like, I really want to keep this conversation going about colorism, because it is a real thing. And I think one of the ways that we can kind of overcome colorism, or bring it to the forefront, and making sure that we are kind of calling it out for what it is that, first of all, we have to acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge that it exists, just like racism exists. We have to acknowledge the fact that you have people who intently do things that will better people with lighter skin, and who honestly discriminate against people with darker skin. We have to call them out on it. And we need to continue to have this conversation. I think that's the other part of it. We need to have this conversation about colorism and what it truly means of what colorism is and what's going on. And I think for Black people especially, is to make sure that we're not like, if you're light skinned, you're beautiful. If you're light skinned, if you're dark skinned, you're beautiful. Some of my favorite actresses are dark skinned. I love Viola Davis. I love Lupita. Like, they are gorgeous in their dark skin. Now, I do believe other Black women who are light skinned, I believe that they're beautiful too, like Halle Berry. They're all beautiful. But Halle Berry is not more beautiful than Viola Davis. You know what I'm saying? So acknowledge that no matter what your skin tone is, you are beautiful. And that having dark skin should not keep you from succeeding, just like having light skin. I mean, even going back to when I was at that Walmart and I saw that bleaching cream, it concerned me because you actually have people out there that think that their lives would be better if they were only a little bit lighter. Maybe I'll get that job. But I'm here to say that that is not the case. I remember when I was a kid and in the summertime, I would purposely get darker in the summer because I just wanted to see how dark I could get, because I just think being black is beautiful. I think the darker you are, I think like I love black people and I love dark skinned people because the richness of that skin tone, of the melanin, I just think is beautiful. And so if you follow me on Facebook, if you follow me on Instagram, I love posting different pictures of dark skinned black people because I want people to know that dark skin is beautiful. You don't, this whole thing about being light equals beautiful, that is not it. And so I just think that is one of the ways that we can continue this conversation, acknowledging that colorism exists, is to be bold about it and just believe that no matter what your skin tone is, I think all black people are beautiful. We are different shades of blackness. And I think that's what makes us very unique. And we need to embrace that instead of being put against each other, because that is exactly what the white man wants us to do. They want us to stay divided, because if we're divided, then we can't accomplish anything. But as soon as we put all that division to the side, come together, that's when we can really do some good and where nobody can stop us. Now it's time, we're going to move into the Bird's Eye View review. And so this week I'm featuring a company called Gardener's Garden. It's a natural skincare line. He has products for hair, body, for oral, and he has soaps. And I actually use their feminine wash, and I absolutely love it because the feminine wash is natural, is organic, and is very safe for women. I also use their body oil, and I really like that too. They even have products for your pets, which I think is kind of cool. So they have like a shampoo that has a nice scent to it, like after you wash your pet. So the website is gardenersgarden.com, and I will include that in the show notes. And so you can get that information, but it's Gardener's Garden. And I think he's actually he's out of Maryland. Yeah, I think he's out of Maryland from his Instagram that I've seen. So that is the Bird's Eye View review for this week. In other news, if you guys haven't heard or haven't seen, I have a website. So now my website is live. So please be sure to go check that out. That would be, you can always go to the link in my bio and you can get to the website from there. Within the website, I have a blog where I will go more in depth on some of the topics that I'm talking about here in the podcast and other discussions that I might want to talk about. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. You can email me at ByrdOwlconsulting@gmail.com, and just in the subject line, just be sure to put Bird's Eye View. That way I know that it's pertaining to the podcast. But so be sure to follow me on social media if you haven't already. All of my handles will be in the show notes. If you're listening to Apple Podcasts, be sure to please subscribe, leave a 5-star review. Please leave a review, share with your friends, share with your teacher friends, your friends who are educators, friends who work at museums, and have them tune in. I think this is, I'm trying to really do some really good topics and content for you guys. And just be sure that have a good content base for you. Just a reminder, of course, again, Black History around the corner. So if you or your organization or someone you know is looking for an idea for Black History Month, or someone to do a program for you, you can always schedule your consultation with me. And again, the link will be in the show notes. The cover art for the podcast and for my business is done by Design by Willpower. You can find him on Instagram and Facebook. And just hope you guys enjoy the episode for today. So thank you so much for listening. And remember, in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you come from. So hopefully you will be back next week. So bye.